Today is Thursday, the 12th of February 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. Yesterday, I talked about footprint resilience, and if you remember, we treat footprint assets, which are the strategic geographical layout of production facilities like factories, warehouses, supply chain networks, designed all of them to optimize cost, efficiency, and market proximity, right? So today is the thing boards perhaps underestimate because it looks like admin many times, but it's usually the real critical path in many iterations. So through the assets lens, today is compliance and the methodology as an asset. And when we mention compliance, is a permission to operate, if you may, and methodology is the evidence pack and work method that gets you to yes faster with fewer surprises. And when I say yes faster, is when you launch a project to the market and you need all these licenses, requirements, and permissions ready to go and operate in the market, right? So let's take three problems to consider here. Number one is hidden approvals and permits that often are the true constraints, especially when you touch environmental safety, data, or financial conduct regimes. So you miss that sequence and the whole plan slows, right? So I give you an example. In Wales and across the UK, there is an assessment process like habitat regulatory assessments, which exists precisely to test impacts on and evidence. So I don't know if you know about that, the habitat regulatory assessment, but I'm going to build an example around that. That is a real case. And by the way, there are plenty more of these regulatory frameworks everywhere. So if you treat regulatory requirements as a late stage checkbox, pretty much you are exposed to redesign everything in public because you want to launch something or you are working on something in a project, and all of a sudden you have to stop everything to be compliant with this regulation. And this happened, as I mentioned, with the London Stock Exchange company, the live listed company, that they showed the delivery is gated by regulatory sequencing and safety and environmental requirements, so including inspections and permission pathways, but not by the lack of ambition or quality of the project, because actually, literally, is the regulatory sequencing, right? So they have an order to produce certain evidence, licenses, and environmental impact studies that are not in the right place in the right time, and that created delays and stalled all the projects. So, in other words, you can imagine the following: if strategy is your very nice sports car and compliance is a signaling system on the motorway, yes, you can drive as fast as the speed limit allows you, but you will be very frustrated when you start to come across mergers where other drivers are saying, hold on a second, you have to be careful about other people because they have to merge, or stop signals or traffic lights or roundabouts. And I say, well, the motorway shouldn't happen that, but happens. So I cannot find another example that is more simple than this. Now, there are examples in other industries. This is particularly for habitats and protected species, but actually let me run through another examples that probably are familiar with your industry. In banking, for example, or finance, is the authorities and the conduct. In healthcare, is the clinical governance and safety cases. In infrastructure, is planning and environmental assessment too. In technology, if data is data protection and security accreditations, and so on and so forth. So you see, it's a different labels, but it's the same mechanics at the end. So you have different regulators and framework that you have to be compliant with, but pretty much applies to any industry. Some are a bit more obscure than the other, but obscure I mean because they are not that common, like GDPR, that you hear them every second word in the office environment, though they are related and they are present in every business. So, as a board advisor, what I would propose to consider in reference to compliance. Number one is build a consents map before you build your project plan. So list every permission, license, consents, notifications, and third-party approval requirements, then order them by which is dependent of the other, right? So suggestion number two is treat protected site and protected species considerations as early design inputs, not the late objections. So in this case, whales, habitats, regulatory assessment, guidance, and protected species licensing are explicit about evidence, expectations, and processes. Though, remember that every industry have their own. So for example, in data protection or when you're managing information of your customers or credit cards or payments through the web pages. So all of them require several treatments in terms of compliance. So this example clearly shows that actually if that exists for a physical site in Wales or anywhere in the UK really, it exists for any other industry, digital or physical. And number three, standardized evidence back. So as a methodology asset is a repeatable template that you can, by the way, if you get good at this one, you can trademark and license this template to other companies. So you build an asset that can have another revenue stream. For example, baseline, methodology, mitigations, monitoring and reporting, etc., etc. So when you standardize these, you stop relearning the same lessons every time that you have a project. So many of the engineering companies that actually are advising, they standardize this process, and that's their asset, the methodology. So they have a repeatable process that is transferable and adaptable to many projects, and that's pretty much part of their intellectual property. That's why they are so good doing the things that they do. Now, in terms of boards, one move that you can bring home today is stop asking one question, which is, are we compliant? Which is a very common question in boards. Though I would ask a different question. Ask, for example, what is the next approval that can delay us? And what evidence does it require? So for this question, ask for a dashboard with top 5 approvals to answer that question. So what can delay us and what evidence is required. And these top 5 approvals are number 1, owner, number 2, status, number 3, evidence required, number 4, decision date, and number 5, which is a plan B if delayed. So what or how you surface these invisible bottlenecks that we mentioned in terms of compliance, while you can still flexible to fix them, with 3 ways, with outcomes, differentiators, and risk reduction. That's why it's important, and that's why it matters, while you are flexible to fix them. In terms of outcomes, you produce a board-ready compliance and a methodology as an asset map that turns approvals into managed critical path and not as surprises. And number 2, as a differentiator, you build evidence-backed templates so each new project is faster and cleaner. So rather than a bespoke scramble every time that you launch a new project. And number 3, as a risk reducer, you anchor the map to UK regulator and consenting expectations, reducing reworks, delays, and credibility when that hits to the stakeholders, because they say, nobody saw this, what happened? That's a credibility hit that you don't want. Now, one action you can take today, and it's very easy and doable in 30 minutes or less, write your top 10 approvals, circle the ones with the longest lead time, and assign an evidence owner today. So then you have from the longest lead time to the shortest, so actually see which are the highest impact on those top 10 approvals that you're handling today. So let's pause it here today and reconvene tomorrow. And because if you remember, yesterday we mentioned resilience, today these blockers or invisible blockers in terms of compliance. And I'll finish the week tomorrow with 2 things, which is the system assets and the market assets. So it's 2 levers that make progress repeatable and scalable. So we want to see repeatability, predictability in the things that we do, and also a growth on those things that we do as a company. Now, if you are sitting in a board or an executive team and you want a B team looking for your company from a different perspective, set up a 30-minute call so I can understand your position and how an independent international advisory board looking from the outside in can help you and your team without stepping on your toes, without the traditional consulting overhead, and without the public theater. So we can help you to catch the flag from the other side of the mountain by sharing all the strategies, all the advices, all the cognitive diversity that we have, because we come from many different sectors, different experiences, and that helps your organization to go stronger and more aware of things that perhaps today is a blind side. So have a great day and see you tomorrow. Thank you.